Hello there, Darksiders. It is I, Darkside Leathers, and today we're going to return to Star Wars The Sequel Trilogy and what exactly it's done to the Star Wars storyline. Now, personally, it goes without saying, but the Sequel Trilogy has pretty much made the prequel and the original trilogy pointless when it comes to a storyline. Now, J.J. Abrams came out and said that he wants The Rise of Skywalker to be about paying for the debts of the previous generations and not restoring something of an old age, but building something new, basically. At least, that's how I'm interpreting it. But there's a problem with that statement. Think back to the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy was basically about the destruction of the Jedi and the fall the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, as well as Darth Vader. Because we got to see Palpatine basically trick the entire galaxy into a widespread conflict so he can purposely spread the Jedi thin and wipe them out when the time came. So, for a long time, the galaxy was in, as Obi-Wan said, dark times. But see, the sequel trilogy doesn't have to pay for anything about that time frame because the original trilogy paid for it already. You see, the point of the original trilogy was to essentially defeat the Empire, bring back the Republic, and restore the Jedi. Basically undo everything that the prequel trilogy did from a storyline perspective. I mean, these people weren't sitting in chairs talking and diplomacy. There was an entire war fought to restore the galaxy back to the days of the Republic and the Jedi. I mean, tons of people died, including Alderaan. A planet was destroyed. And you gotta think, Earth, we have, a couple billion people. Imagine how many people was probably in Alderaan. I mean, it was a widespread conflict. But in the end, the rebellion was successful. They launched a surprise attack that was actually a giant trap set for the Emperor, but they turned their most desperate hour into a glorious victory for the galaxy. Luke defeated the Emperor and redeemed his father, and he was supposed to restore the Jedi. So, this is where the problem with the sequel trilogy comes in from the storyline perspective. Now, I have my own theory on why it's like this, but that's for a video for another time. So from what we know of the comics, and Battlefront 2, though I really don't want to get into that the rebellion did eventually become the New Republic, and Naboo was their capital until eventually Coruscant surrendered and the Empire was dissolved. Now, we still don't know exactly how the First Order was built from the ashes. We still don't know where Snoke really comes from. I mean, there's still a lot of just mysteries from The Force Awakens that we still don't know about. So then we get to the sequel trilogy era. And unfortunately, we saw everything our heroes fight for be for nothing, which is really sad. So let's get to Luke. So as we saw, Luke was rebuilding the Jedi, but apparently he waited 10 years before he started the Academy. I'm not 100% too sure, but unfortunately his nephew Ben Solo killed everyone, destroyed the Jedi again, all because of their moment, will you? I mean, I'm still not too sure what that was. But the Jedi were destroyed once more. And that alone basically makes the fight that Luke had to restore the Jedi pointless. Because, see, Luke then became Jake. And Jake decided to exile himself and just cut himself off from the Force and just go, I'm going to leave behind my family, the galaxy, the Jedi. You get what I'm saying. So the Jedi was just gone again. And unfortunately, Luke's fight, it just didn't work out for him. And then Han Solo, we see him go from a champion of the rebellion, a hero, a leader, to back to smuggling. Now, to be fair, his wife left him, his son went on a murderous rampage. I mean, if I was Han Solo and that happened in my life, I can't say I blame him. I'd probably go in hiatus and just go back to my old ways as well. People revert back to what's comfortable. But at the same time, it was still sad to see this once, heroic man be reduced to just a simple smuggler again. And Princess Leia, she helped build the New Republic, she helped fight the Empire. But yet here she is fighting again and still fighting the same fight, just this time against the First Order. For Princess Leia, the war never ended. She's still fighting it. As well for a lot of the old rebellion leaders, because as we saw in The Force Awakens, you had people like Akbar and other rebellion heroes still fighting the fight. And unfortunately, that makes it pointless. Now, part of the New Republic that really makes it pointless is the pure fact that the First Order destroys it. Now, personally, I can't buy into the fact that all the First Order had to do was destroy the Senate and then everything would just fall into shambles. Like, why would the New Republic have all their ships and forces in one system? I mean, they're supposed to be throughout the whole galaxy. I find it very hard to believe that the New Republic goes, oh, hey, we're all going to be here and be destroyed by the First Order. But unfortunately, due to that, it made the entire Galactic Civil War pointless. Because as I said, that war was fought to restore the Republic and to restore an age forgotten by the galaxy. But unfortunately, in one push of a button, all of it was gone. The sequel trilogy has made the original trilogy pointless because everything we saw the rebellion and our heroes fight for, it just disappeared in one movie. It only took one movie to reset the galaxy to a state that it's already been in. And personally, I do believe that the sequel trilogy should have been more about the New Republic and the New Jedi Order fighting for survival against a new threat instead of just being destroyed and reduced to nothing. I mean, as I said, I have a theory. And, I definitely believe Disney knew exactly what they were doing when they made the sequel trilogy. But it's just that the bigger picture, the sequel trilogy has made just everything pointless. In fact, another big thing that's really kind of bothering me is in the Star Wars comics, especially in the Age of Republic, and the one about Yoda talks about the Force. Oh, he goes on his own micro-adventure on Dagobah, but the point of the matter is, Luke finally lands on Dagobah, and Yoda's talking to himself, and he sees Luke and says, this is the new hope. This is the next generation of Jedi. But the problem is, we know how Luke's story ends now. We know that he doesn't become that Grandmaster Luke Skywalker on how he was in the EU. He becomes Jake Skywalker. And in other comics, he's always being praised as the hero and everything else, which during the time of the Galactic Civil War, yes, he was. He was the champion of the rebellion. But it just really feels empty and hollow now because we know how Luke's story ends. Like another example, the Cassian Ordo, I believe, from Rogue One, he's getting his own show, which is supposed to be like a spy thriller and stuff like that. They can't build any tension in that show, at least not around Cassian, because we know how his story ends already. So if Cassian ever found himself in a bad situation where he might die, we know for a fact that he's going to be okay. So the sequel trilogy has just really done a lot of damage to the Star Wars storyline because it just made so much pointless. And when J.J. Abrams came out and said that he wants The Rise of Skywalker to be a movie that's going to pay for the debts of the prequel and the original trilogy, that would have been fine. But a lot of the problems in the galaxy was self-inflicted. Now, what I mean by that It's been our sequel trilogy heroes that's done everything to the galaxy how it was. Because the original trilogy heroes, their fight was done and over with. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them became failures, and they didn't fight back. They just gave up, cast away just everything, and set aside. But for the most part, they already paid the debt for the prequel trilogy. It was the sequel trilogy characters that destroyed the Jedi, destroyed the New Republic, and reset the galaxy to a state that it's already been in. So it's kind of hard to reset or pay for the debts of previous generations when it's the current generation that's done all the damage. I mean, I don't know what Disney or Lucasfilm is thinking storyline-wise when it comes to the sequel trilogy. But the reality of the matter is, everything with the original trilogy and the prequels is pointless now. Now, I'm sure we're still going to get good stories and such for the comics, because the Darth Vader comics are actually really good. I mean, if you have time, I definitely recommend reading them. But at the same time, I just can't get into Luke Skywalker's arc anymore with the comics and the books. Because we know how he ends. We know what's going to happen to him. The same thing with Han Solo. I can't get into him anymore because I know what's going to happen to him. And it's just really sad to say that. You know, like maybe if Luke was the Grandmaster as he was in the EU, there probably would still be excitement, because especially in the Age of Republic Yoda comic, when Yoda says Luke is the new hope in the next generation, we could go, yeah, Luke is, because he's a freaking badass. But that's not what we got. That's not who he is. Our heroes have been reduced to nothing, and the sequel trilogy made everything pointless. So, I mean, it's really hard to get into older Star Wars stories, especially revolving around the original trilogy, because you know how it's going to end, and it's not going to end well. I don't know what's going to happen. And honestly, I don't even think people at Lucasfilm at Disney knows what's going to happen. Definitely the sequel trilogy needed to be much more baked in the oven before they released it. They should have thought much more about just everything, instead of getting to this point where they're like, well, crap, we messed up so much, now we don't know what to do. Well, Darksiders, if you watch this video, I greatly appreciate it. As I said, I mean, I still want Star Wars to be good, but it's hard to like something that made everything else pointless. Till next time, this is Darkside Leathers, signing off.